Good evening, it's Joyful Christian Hermit. I've had more thoughts about, is it our believing so strongly in a passion or a goal, or continuing on someone else's, or is it God's will that has things become a success or whatever? And how do we know if things are success in God's view? We can pretty much tell, though, if it helps many people, or even one or two people. If it's positive, it's good. But I've been thinking, that given that this person who I heard very convicted and very impassioned was going to carry on her deceased husband's ministry and outreach program, she would call it mission, his mission. And I thought, well, maybe God has given that to her as her mission now. Could be. I don't know. That wasn't stated in her statement, but it could be. But she was so sure it was going to be bigger and better, which can be a very good thing to have that kind of positivity, confidence in God, that God has already brought something good out of bad, her husband passing. So, and his voice being tried to be silenced, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying, making any statement politically good or bad in a situation. It was good because the person spoke about Christ and about being a good father and a good husband, and etc., encouraging young people, and had this conviction, this passion, this idea from an early age. So undoubtedly he was called by God. That was his mission in life. And God took him from it, allowed him to be taken from it. So perhaps the wife is to carry it on by God's will, see. And that just wasn't stated or emphasized. Now, those of us in, maybe older people, or in our church, or in more, having read about more things like this, or more into the theology, that's probably what made me question, because I keep wanting to know God's will, and keep waiting and waiting, and in the meantime keep busy praying, not doing so much reading. Now, if I do daily reading. It's just short portions of scripture, the daily mass readings, and short excerpts from some theologian or doctor of the church or bishop or holy person, saint, their writings. So that's more. I used to do more book reading, but I'm heavy into the manual labor now, as much as my body will allow, with rest breaks or being exhausted, which I sort of am now, but unable to sleep well. So it's after one. It's about 1:30 here now, and I haven't slept yet. And I worked hard today helping the daughter, which I realized is a blessing. She needed the help. She asked for the help, and I should help. That's what God does for me. I need the help. I ask for the help, and he gives me help. So this is Christian charity. I don't have other people who are aware of me much to ask me to do anything for them. And this daughter now, she wants to invest in another townhome and possibly live in that one, because you don't see into the people behind, and it has a little open space to the side, and then another unit. So she has a little space, and I realize that's what she doesn't like about her townhome, is, and it's western facing, her townhome is, and you get all that western sun beating in, and birds keep hitting the patio window and flopping and dying, and she's squeamish about that going on. So I think her fiance goes out and picks up the dead birds, and I did it a couple of times for her. And I understand, not every. I was totally had to die to myself on the island regarding rats and raccoons and birds in the house and dead rats and living rats and dead raccoons and living raccoons. And so I had to deal with all that, and I am, what would you say, used to it. I could cope with it, do it, handle it. And I could, because the first time I had to shoot a raccoon and bag it and haul it off and dump it out in a field for the other birds or different falcons and hawks to feed on, and rats probably did too. I don't know, but I couldn't begin to bury all those raccoons that I had to trap and shoot and get rid of. I had an infestation of them, rabid ones. So they were stalking me, chased me on the property one time. So tried to get me. I got made it into the farmhouse, but it was horrible. And I'd pray before I have to shoot each one. I named each of them for a saint in alphabetical order, and it was horrible. But I had to do it, and so I have compassion. That she doesn't want to have, but she does. But she doesn't want to have to go out and pick up the dead birds. So that's an unpleasant factor. And this other townhome has a southern exposure, which is the best exposure to have if you're going to purchase a home, north-south, and to have the south out your view, or the most of the day that you would look out on, or be on a patio facing south. It's good for exposure, it's good for your heat bill and your air conditioning bill, and etc. So I'm very pleased that she's interested in investing. And then she would rent her townhome, or I would stay in it. Or if she really wants this house, then I could stay in the one she's planning on getting, but it has more street noise from the busy street. But inside it doesn't, and I'm inside a lot of the time, frankly. So, but anyway, so she's thinking wisely. That's a good way for her to make money also. She would rent her townhome and live in the other. I didn't realize that she could swing it financially, but I guess interest rates have dropped slightly. And she's a vet, so she has VA loan. Evidently she can. So who knows what's going on with that. But I'm pleased that she wants to learn how to do things, fix up places. So that's good. And I'm teaching her different aspects of working, now doing plumbing. We'll do plumbing in the next day or two, but I have other work to do. So, but I'm going to help. It's my act of charity. But I realized in thinking through and recalling when God was speaking through me, and we tape recorded, Dr. H tape recorded, and then I transcribed. And this is one of the next sessions that God spoke to me, and I transcribed it. This was the continuation of the last one I shared a couple of videos ago about John the Baptist. So this continues, and this is when I started having the big, huge vision of the bloom. And it said, this is what I repeated. I could see this. I was describing what I saw, and Dr. H was tape recording it. Later, I transcribed it. Blooms, barely the tip of yellow, and it expands and opens up, facing the sun, facing upward. It opens and the fine petals explode in beauty. I was describing what I was seeing. in this vision. And this is how everything grows. And we have guides with us, God with us, angels meaning guides, and saints, holy ones on the other side, the Virgin Mary, who helps guide us. God is with us, but we have to wait. Wait for the growth. This happens in God's time and not ours. And some wither and die because they cut themselves off from the source, and that with a capital S. So we must go in the proper time and at the proper speed and with the proper nourishment. Touching onto the world only means touching onto hard, clay-baked soil. Nothing grows there. This is John the Baptist speaking to me now. Back in this was June 24th, 1988. I found the date of all this. This was a continuation. After I had seen, I think maybe it's the week before, introduced seeing John the Baptist, and he spoke to me then. And then this was the next week, June 24th, and I saw that big flower again, a big golden flower, St. John's wort. I think that was the sequence. I'd have to go back into my journal to get the sequence, if this was an extension on the same day as the other, or if this was a separate one. And it was on June 24th, though. I think this was separate the next time that I saw Dr. H. And then this happened again. The Holy Spirit. And I explained, it was 2 videos ago, it says Message from John the Baptist, where God or Luke the physician, different ones would take turns. Teresa of Avila, I think my angel, and John the Baptist, they would use my voice, and my soul would be as if set to the side, brought to the side. And then they would use my voice and speak in English. Dr. H was just thinking it and thinking, why not? Why aren't you speaking in Aramaic? But he said Arabic because he didn't know Aramaic was the N. I saw this huge M, and within the word Aramaic with the M capitalized. But the voice, John the Baptist says, why would you want that? Why would you want? He could read, he knew what Dr. H was thinking and wondering. Why? Why would I do it? Would take you too long to decipher a language you're totally unfamiliar with. And emphasized Aramaic to Dr. H, correcting him, but without saying, oh, it's not Arabic, it's Aramaic, but emphasize it. See, God, and when we die and become totally purified and have union with God, we will innately know the perfect way to deal with souls and with one another. See, it's not to outwardly, correct and put the person down in essence, but it was to, he just quietly, but enough so that Dr. H later remarked on it, how he had thought it was Arabic and was corrected with Aramaic, without saying, oh, you're wrong, so we will learn ways of perfection with others, with interactions. That's how there's peace and love and beauty in heaven, because we are purified and our dealings with one another will be purified also. It's just so beautiful, something we don't think about. And we can practice that on earth. I need a lot of practice. I need the awareness before I speak and to have and pray for an innate way of dealing with people, so that I don't be like a bull in the china shop, or speak before I think kind of thing. So he continues on here that, so we must go in the proper time and at the proper speed and with the proper nourishment. Nourishment not only meaning food, though, nourishment of our souls and our minds and our hearts. Touching onto the world only means touching onto hard, clay-baked soil. Nothing grows there. So why do you keep trying to move your roots and send down shoots into that desert soil? It is foolishness. Goes on to explain. He's talking to me. He knows me. And this is good still today. How many years later? I figured it out last time. From 1988 to 2025. Many years. Much of your earth time is wasted when, and this is for everyone though, he tells me at another point. It's not just for me, it's for everyone. So much of your earth time is wasted when you send tendrils over into that which is evil. And that evil can be thoughts or even actions of others who do not creep forward, but who remain in the desert. And he, means by desert, not just a physical desert out there, in Egypt or somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico if you're in the U.S., or someplace over in China, or Siberia is considered sort of the Russian desert, even though it's cold and freezing. It says here, and you have been wondering, this is amazing what comes next. Because this is June 24th, the birthday of John the Baptist. And when I, after this, I went to the library to look up what that big bloom was, and found out it was St. John's wort and the significance of it in medieval times. Then on the eve of St. John's Day, the 24th of June, a young maiden would put a St. John's wort in the window. And the evening before, on the eve of St. John's Day, and the very first man that she was to meet the next day was to become her husband. That was the tradition, or the thought behind that ritual, that tradition of putting the St. John's wort in the window of unmarried women maidens would. And you have been wondering, if your woman heart, whether the invitation would be at a worldly level, perhaps a meeting with a man of your heart's desire. I was just barely 38 then. I'd been single for 35 years, since 33. Well, I wasn't legally single yet, but my husband left when I was 33, a few weeks after the accident. And this could be so. But it means, at a more beautiful level, a union of a graduation into the ceremonious. And yes, your heart did flutter then, and I felt my heart flutter right when this ended up being God, I think, speaking or I don't know, might have been John the Baptist still, but anyway, at a more beautiful level, a union of a graduation into the ceremonious. I was feeling, the depth and an understanding that it meant much, much more than the marriage of a human man. And it did my heart. God was showing me my heart's desire. The ceremonious union of a higher level of being, of having succeeded in the determination to keep going and not of succumbing on infertile ground. That is wonderful. This is truly your heart's desire. to have a spiritual growth and union, to be in attendance of the ceremony of the soul. So let not your heart be troubled, but take heart in your wedding, to be wedded to higher levels of spirituality, and do not fear the joy that you have and which is expressed through your exuberance over the gifts that are given you at this your wedding celebration, a wedding that others may never understand or appreciate as you do. And that was powerful because Dr. H and I had forgotten, but back in April, this was June 24th, back in April, some morning, I have it written in my journal, I woke up, I'd had a dream vision of a wedding invitation. And you are invited. I opened it up, and it had an image, a very homespun image of a bed with a quilt on it and a little heart above, and it was a wedding invitation, though, written in the script that you see in printed wedding invitations, formal then, after the very humble homespun little image, of this bed with a quilt on it and the two puffy pillows and a little heart above it. A union bed, see, a wedding bed. And, but I couldn't read, other than it said June. And a voice said, I hope you will be there. So I told Dr. H back then about it. He says, what, we're trying to figure out what it was. God knows everything. And those who are in union with God know. John the Baptist knew that I had been wondering, and that Dr. H, who was sitting right beside me, tape recording these things, also knew. We had been trying to figure out. And we figured, well, how would I meet someone that fast? But maybe he thought, well, maybe I would meet someone who would, in future, would be my husband. He kept it at that level, and I did too, because I didn't think of other unions. I was Protestant then. I was just starting to read a few things. I think by then I had just read or was in the process of reading Teresa of Avila's life. And I'd read some of Merton then, because I'd run across his name in a book. An art teacher at Beverly Hills High School had insisted I should read. He told me the name, and a couple of years later, I remembered the name, Celebration of Discipline. It was written by a Quaker, but it was a lovely book, and it had quotations and different information from it was just very good. It had good information, even though it was it had different thoughts in it and quotes from Merton and others. So I became more interested then in reading Merton, but fortunately I did not at that time read his Asian wanderings. He went off into interest into the Eastern and Asia, into Buddhism, which is a philosophy, not a religion, but he got off into all of that. And God did not have me find out about those books until after I was Catholic. And I realized, well, I have no interest in that. I did my exploring earlier in life of various religions, Eastern religions, and Native American religious beliefs and things. So, but I remained Christian. See, I would examine when I was younger, but I knew I was called to Christ. So, but this was amazing that, this was the wedding of my soul that God was explaining to me, John the Baptist. So it was really quite something for me to understand the wedding of the soul. That's what my heart desires. Union with God. And I needed to be reminded of that because I have been once again sort of drawn backwards into earth, into the temporal more. And thinking about, well, I haven't succeeded at anything for God. I haven't, but yes, I have. Doing His will is a moment by moment. It's a moment by moment experience. God's will and our will, and what God wants of us and what we want, they go together. And our dream, my dream anyway, is union with God. I needed this reminder from, I think it's like 35 years ago, 33, 32 years ago, that this happened. And God gave me a big help, a boost. John the Baptist did also. And God gave me the espousal of my soul, the wedding of my soul, to show me and to go slowly and stop trying to keep putting my roots down into the hard soil, into the temporal. It's not for me. Nothing grows there. God is where things are fertile. And if we have a mission, God will let us know. And it doesn't have to be huge. It can be, I realize today, yet again, living the holy, narrow pathway. Every moment, day after day, night after night, doing that is a great thing. It's very pleasing to God and desiring God alone. For those of you who are single, either by being widowed, male or female, a widow or a widower, or never have married, or married and divorced, as am I, 41 years ago. But God wanted me for Himself. Always has, but He knew I wanted children. I wanted to be a mother, and I wanted to have a husband. So He allowed that. And I look back and realize that God allowed it with someone who I didn't know he had these personality disorders. Obviously, or I wouldn't have married him. I didn't know. They're very good. Those are disorders that they're very well experienced in masking. They don't come up and say, oh, by the way, I'm a sociopath with psychopathic tendencies and a narcissist. No, they're lying to you. They're smooth. They're charming. If you catch them in a lie, they erupt to a point where you don't ever want to do that again. But they don't until and one time he did before the wedding, and we were going to break it off, but my aunt patched it up. Oh, people always have these tiffs before a marriage, before a wedding. It's, very tense. It's emotional time. And see, God wanted that. He wanted me to get married, experience having a husband, have my children, God gives us what we want if it's also okay with Him. And He wanted that. He wanted my children to be born and to live life. And He did not want me to stay with that husband, though. He gave me what the gift, the experience of it. And He knew when it was time to wake me up to the reality of this man who had these multiple lives going on, and how he left shortly after the accident. I mean, a good, holy man wouldn't do that. Leave an injured wife with 3 little children. So, or have run around on her. But in a way, I didn't know. I suspected 2 times. But other than that, well, and even more, I really strongly suspected 2 times. And the second time, it was at the point of we were going to be back together. We weren't separated other than by his career, his job. And he wanted me to stay back. Our house wasn't sold. The kids were in school. The girls were. And then said, if we get the house sold, then I'd come up there. Well, I got the house sold. Well, stay the end of the year. Stay till the end of the year. Well, I put an end to that. But that also was good. It hastened the reality of what was going on. So God planned, He knows what He's doing, and He cares about us. If we really want something, He lets us experience it because it's good. 3 beautiful children, and I have 1 in heaven helping and waiting for me. And normally, every house I've lived in, I have this painting of Samuel in the temple praying, this little child praying. And I named the child Samuel John, after my dad's name is John. But after that painting, well, not after the painting, but after Samuel in the Bible. Here I am, Lord, I have come to do your will. Eli said, oh, that's the Lord talking to you. So say that to him next time you hear him call your voice. So I always, but it's been packed away, so it's not up above my head now. But that's always to remember to pray for him at night. And I was one time allowed in a vision to hold him. And just briefly, then he was taken away, by an angel. So, who manifested more as a nurse, but I realized was an angel. I realized even in the vision. So, he's there, waiting. I will meet him before long. With him in person, in spirit. I will, not in person, but you know what I mean. So, yes, so God does, and then God knew when it was time to remove me from this person. And it was such a situation that when I knew more, I never knew the full truth. You don't with the sociopath with psychopathic tendencies and narcissists tossed in. So they usually go together. So, and the horrors that we went through until a judge let us leave the state and get 2,200 miles away. Even though he was a principal then and became a superintendent. And you would have to say very successful. Large superintendencies and large districts and made lots of money. One daughter said, oh, but he's so successful. And it's after he'd really been a pill again, awful, with one of his grandchildren. I said, at what cost of success is that, He'd lie in his interviews, I found out. And so, but he was a hard worker and he was very talented. They're intelligent people. And he was very talented in education. It was his passion. And so he did a lot of good also, and also a lot of bad. He was sort of a naughty man, to say the least, but very good in other ways. So, and isn't that how it is? People get called in and overtaken by the evil one, tempted, and they can have good manifest, and the devil does all kinds of things once we get in his league. So get snared, because the devil wants to keep the person, and so and be a temptation to others then, and to cause more havoc and more hurt. So God had me marry someone who he knew I would be quite willing then, when I found all this, to, good riddance. Thank you, Lord, for saving me from this. Because he wasn't treating me well at all toward the end, nor the children. Started to lose his temper, and etc., etc. So, God arranged it all. See? And then here he was, inviting me to the wedding. It was the wedding of my soul. June 24th of 1988. And I reread this every now and then. It's been several years, few years anyway. Well, I don't know, maybe I read it all maybe a year and a half ago, went through all these. I think we met 5 times or something, and I would have these experiences. And then Dr. H didn't want to do it anymore the last time, because, well, I'll read it to you and explain why. I think why he became uncomfortable, because God could see him and knew what he was thinking, and asked him questions, and it put him on the hot seat a little bit. So, and it ruined Dr. H's. He had blocked God out in that sense. He believed in a higher power or a great source or something of energy, and he did, and God spoke to him using terms that wouldn't turn him away, and are accurate also, but not liturgical terms necessarily, but just the fact that this was a reality. And then God explained to him the process, because Dr. H wanted to know. He was starting to really question, and it was shaking him too much. So he didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't want to tape record anymore. So, and that was okay, because I had what I needed. God knew I had what I needed. Then after I became Catholic, I started to have more messages and visions and things, explaining more. God started talking to me in other ways. And now he talks to me just in the silence, and when I'm doing manual labor or in situations. Like today, he's been, from what was in the news, this person saying, that she was going to have this be better than ever and continue it on, and it would be larger, and all of that, and her intensity in her voice, and her conviction, her desire, and her believing. But I add in more of God's will to things, has to be God's will, or what we want may or may not happen. That's the bottom line for divinity, for divine outcome, miraculous outcome, which can be something quiet in our own little home that no one else ever knows about, that happens in instant or many times a day. We have miracles, we have encounters with God all the time, the more aware we become. But of course, if we're working in a career that requires focus, God isn't going to make himself so known that you are distracted, see? So God works with us. He knows what we need to do and what he wants us doing. So I realized with me, all through, from when I was in seventh grade, maybe eighth, I think it was seventh grade, in the back of the high school auditorium, my mother was a drama teacher and she had a play that the students were putting on for an audience, for anyone in the community who wanted to come. And I was young enough, she didn't want me staying at home alone at night, so my dad was working, traveled. So I went, and I remember before the program, had to go early because she was there with her students, just telling God, I want to do something great for God. I want to do something great for you with my life. And repeatedly, anything that I would do that I thought, oh, this is more in line, like the soup kitchen, it grew and grew miraculously so. But he plucked me out of that right when it was really going. And I had to drop out, and I was scapegoated out, but, it was obvious that, God had allowed it to happen. And my spiritual father, too, you're done with that, because I was really being, had a lot of hassles. Even the priest was really trying to thwart it in odd ways. He wanted to have it be in charge. And I was the type that I built it so that no one was really in charge. But he knew, though, that something had happened with me that taught me how to do all that, organize it like that, and it grew like within 3 months, enormous amount. And it was bringing in people from other churches to as volunteers. It was getting huge in the town, and he resented that, so he wanted to be the one who, in his mind was in charge. But anyway, see, God arranged it all. God wanted me as a hermit. He had already foretold that through my grandmother. She didn't use the word hermit. She said I was to hibernate like a bear. So if she'd back then said hermit, I wouldn't have known. I would have thought this is nuts, because I wasn't Catholic. Protestants don't have a hermit vocation. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know about Martin Luther then. I knew of John Wesley. I was brought up Methodist and didn't even know the year he was born or anything much about him, other than he started the Methodist Church in England or somewhere. So, Protestants don't go back in history much, other than reading the Bible and the Old Testament, but they don't research the beginnings of the church or the early church or the church fathers or the popes or anything. Of course not. That's Catholic. Oh no, oh no. They don't realize we all were Catholic in the beginning. We were all Christians, and they started calling themselves Catholic because other people were calling them Catholic. And Pope Clement in the early second century told people, don't fight it, just accept it. Don't get hung up on what they're calling us. And Catholic held and stuck. So anyway, God does. The main thing is I belong to God. Divine union is my heart's desire, always has been. Even when I was married, when my husband said, earthly husband at the time, said, I want a wife who worships me. And I said, well, I love you as a husband, but I worship God. Everyone should worship God. Oh, wrong answer, but right answer. You know what I mean. And then and always, deep down, amidst the clutter of the temporal world and working and everything, having children, rearing them, and handling their activities and cooking and being a wife and a mother, a teacher, and working on my doctorate. Deep down was still that yearning to be one with God, to do something great for God. Not for the world, but for God. I said, I want to do something great for you, God, with my life. But, of course, in my temporal mindedness, I would think, I thought, oh, the soup, when the soup kitchen started going like, wow, I had no idea. And I loved it. It was fun. I was miraculously able to do the work on the weekends. I maybe had a couple weekends I would have pain seizures and couldn't, but the volunteers handled everything beautifully. There were so many volunteers, something like 400. Within 3-4 months, I had all this. God was just blessing it. And it's still going. I don't know if it still is right now, but since my friend Mary passed, I don't really have news of it. But yeah, so, but no, union with God um, is beyond. It's beyond temporal. See, and to want to do something for God is going to be beyond temporal usually, in many ways. And it came to me later today, this evening. Just live the holy narrow pathway. The greatest commandment: love God above all things and love others as you love yourself, or in other words, love others as God loves them and loves us. Love with the love of God, others and ourselves. So learn God's love, which is not so simple. It can be simple, but I tend to make it difficult through my faults and not focusing, not cooperating. So that's being on the holy narrow pathway, is learning increasingly, moment to moment, cooperating with God and living the gospel rule, moment by moment, whether we flub or not. Just stay on that narrow, holy pathway. Holy, narrow pathway. And that's a great thing. Even if we get if we stay on it some of the day, and as soon as we take even a toe over the line outside the holy narrow pathway, we bring our foot back in, bring our toe back in, over and over and over. That pleases God. To live the greatest commandment, to live the gospel rule, and love God. Love God. So that's so simple, isn't it? It's simple, is it not? And to keep going. Keep going. God bless His real presence in us. I have a catechesis, teachings by St. John, no, it's not by St. John Chrysostom. It's a different one. But I want to share a sermon with you another time. Next video, it won't be too long. It'll be this sermon, or instructions. Let me get the name of the person. I saw it. I saw this. Cyril of Jerusalem. He's a bishop and a doctor of the church. Cyril of Jerusalem. Lived a very interesting life back in the 6th century, in the 500s. He died in 586. And what he wrote is very helpful. It reminded me again later today, what my heart yearns for and what God wants of me. What He desires and loves of me, And what I desire and love of Him, union, union with God, doing great for God. And it can be in ways that God will let you know. It can be continuing on someone else's mission because God has made it that person's mission also when they've died. Or it's like me, just striving to live the holy narrow path day, moment by moment, no matter what I'm doing. Suffering mostly, in bed suffering and exhausted, or helping a daughter put sheetrock in where her tile backsplash, when was removed, tore out a lot of the sheetrock. Help her get the cabinet countertop off or get it pried up enough, and then her strong fiance came and lifted it up. We're doing it because he was doing his work. He has a new job he was working on. And I like doing this, and my daughter likes it too. I think she's interested in learning some of how I've learned to do things. If she wants to invest now in another place to rent, make some money, it's good for her. So through whatever we do, can be doing manual labor, gonna show her some plumbing, how to put P-traps in and things, and or whatever all. Can be that, or it can be speaking to hundreds and thousands of people and telling them about Christ, or being a missionary over in a country in India, or a state in India, or Africa, or South America. It can be a hermit, a widow, a widower, a single person, loving God. See, so holy narrow pathway. That's the way. That's the way forward. And each person will be shown over their life, and some will be given something at the very beginning and it goes on, or their lives are cut short, or others will go on and have various things given them from God to be doing or learning. And with the hermit, living moment by moment with God in silence, solitude, slowness, selflessness, suffering, stability, stillness, serenity. I think those are nine S's. And if you must add S of speed in there, that's fine. But slowness, I think, works very, very well when it's in God's realm. We will go fast enough in heaven. We will talk with our bodies will move quickly with speed. Our thoughts are thought flashing so fast, so speedy, that you don't even have to think about it or do anything. Just instantaneous thought flashings with God and with others. So, holy souls, once we become holy, that's partly why we're on earth, is to work on giving ourselves to God, dying to ourselves and giving ourselves to God to live in us, through us, with us, and in us. Spiritual communion, and if we can get to Mass, if we're well enough and can sit or whatever, and don't have experiences that bother priests and parishioners, then have his body and blood in temporal, tangible form, his real flesh and blood, but has a deep meaning. It's called oh, I forget, it's Mistological Theology or something like that. No, Mistological Catechesis, where we are supposed to be learning the deeper meaning of the church and of the different rituals and the different and the realities such as the body and blood of Christ, the consecrated host and wine that becomes Christ's body and his blood, what it means, what the consecration during Mass means at other levels and dimensions even. So, and what marriage means, and what the different sacraments mean at deeper levels, at mystical levels even, and how to have mystical communion, even if you don't experience any phenomenon, when you in your mind or with desire receive him. And that can be receiving him in the present moment, praying, and it expands your time alone with God for those who are single and more shut in. So it's and if we must go somewhere like I did today, yes, it hurts me. Yes, it wears me out. That's why I'm up late. I guess I get to the point where I should probably take some more pain med, but I needed to talk about this and to be reminded and share with you that probably underneath all, for anyone, God's will and desire for us is to live the holy narrow pathway, which includes living its greatest commandment and living the gospel rule, living as Christ teaches and as the great prophets and John the Baptist and all the teachings in the scriptures help us with knowing how to live the holy narrow pathway. We don't need a lot of gimmicks, or we don't need the extra books even. I have lots of books here. I don't need them, but I enjoy them. And it augments. A lot of them are scriptural exegesis studies, deeper studies and explanation of scripture by great scholars, and writings of great holy people, spiritual directors, priests, monsignors, saints, lay people who had visions and locutions like Catherine of Siena, where her dialogues with Jesus, we can learn so much about God and more about the holy narrow pathway and about his word, living word, and about the sacraments. So it augments, and it's for our desire and pleasure. We have the basis, but God gives us more to enjoy. So, and to think about while we're doing our manual labor or washing the dishes or the mundane things. Dads oftentimes, change the tire if the tire's gone flat on one of the teenagers, or, get their son to help them or their daughter or whatever, or on the wife's car or whatever. Dads are called upon to do maybe more of the physical work, but if there isn't a dad in the family, he's passed away or left or whatever, or same with the mother. The other parent chips in and blends the tasks. But during those time periods, God is in the moment. If our mind is on the narrow pathway, and our actions and our thoughts and our voices, our heart and intention, it's happening then. And we don't have to worry about measuring any success of it, I fell to that trap a few days ago and realized, no, keep going, persevere. It's for God. And God is blessing me with being able to talk through these ideas basically to Him here, but there's a computer on and I'm sharing it with whoever wants. Thoughts that you've probably thought of before, but I hadn't. And the message that I received, you all have weddings of your soul. You may know of them or not. Ask God. He'll remind you. Or you'll have one then. But it wasn't until much later, a few years later, that I had an actual vision or dream vision of the wedding and then of the banquet following the wedding. But there's not been a consummation yet. So Father Vincent says that most often happens at our death if we have already had the mystical marriage. Mystical. It was in vision, but it was real. So I'm basically waiting for Jesus to come back and take me with him. But he has me here for reasons. To keep on the holy, narrow pathway, moment by moment by moment, and do what I can do to God's glory in whatever little things I'm doing. Not everyone is going to have any kind of feedback or whatever, tangibles. It doesn't matter because we are glorifying God. That's the point. See, I wasn't realizing that. I'd forgotten. I'd gotten off kilter by what this wife had said about her deceased husband and carrying on his mission. And that it was going to be better and better than ever. And I pray it will be, but it's up to God. And I did decide our believing it will happen is akin to faith. So we all should have faith that will be on the holy narrow pathway. But when we slip up, get back on. Don't be so stunned when we slip up and fall off the holy narrow pathway or get off on a little side route. So anyway, hope any of this is helpful to you. It's been good for me. I'm so grateful to God. God bless his real presence in us in all aspects.